Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Y'all come on in and be sure to share this live. We are so excited that you are here and that you have joined us. Go ahead and hit that share button. Hit the share button. Let a friend, let family know that we are in the building and we're here to talk about the Black church in Detroit. I am so excited. We have a packed program, an action-packed hour planned for everybody. My name is Orlando Bailey, and I serve as the engagement director for Bridge Detroit. Bridge Detroit is a new journalism and engagement organization here in the city of Detroit that seeks to tell stories that Detroiters want us to tell, right? So we talk to Detroiters to figure out what kind of journalism we want to produce. So that's really great. I am also a contributor to American Black Journal, and that brings me here tonight. Tonight, we're talking about millennials and the Black church in the city of Detroit. It's going to be an amazing discussion, but I really, really want y'all to share this live because it's getting ready to be live. As they say, we have some amazing guests, and I'm going to introduce each of them in a minute. The introductions, though, will be brief because I want you to meet them by how they communicate and show up to this space. I'm super excited. So our first guest that I want to introduce, he is a legend on the east side of Detroit. He is the pastor of Church of the Messiah. He is also a man that I take directions from, that I do everything that he tells me to do because in real life, I'm scared of him. Right. I'm really scared of him. No, but he's also a good friend, an amazing mentor, and an amazing pastor here on the east side. He is Pastor Barry Randolph of Church of the Messiah. Welcome, Pastor Barry, to the watch party.
Thank you, Orlando. I'm so glad to be here. This is an amazing opportunity.
Yes, it is. I'm happy to share space with you once again. Every time we share space in a public way, it's normally on your radio show and you're driving that car. But tonight I get to drive the car and put you in the hot seat. So I'm really excited that the roles are reversed. I also would like to introduce Reverend Kanita Harris, who is of the Detroit Bible Tabernacle. She is also a good friend of mine and a colleague in the community development industry. Reverend Kanita Harris, welcome to the watch party.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I'm so glad to be on. It's so great to be on.
Mr. Bailey.
I'm so glad to be on with you, Orlando.
Thank you. I'm like, what in the world? Don't get on me now because we got people watching. Calling
yeah. And with all the rest of the panel, it's good to be with you all tonight.
Oh, it's so good to see you, and it's so good to be with you. And our last guest is a young millennial Gen Z phenom with over 70,000 followers across the social media platforms. She is a minister on staff at Triumph Church under the leadership of Pastor Solomon Kinlock. Please help us welcome our third and final guest, Minister Micaiah Keener. Hi, Micaiah.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on.
It is indeed a pleasure to have you on. So listen, y'all, those of y'all who are watching on Facebook, this is what we want you to do. We want you to go ahead, number one, and share the live, but we also want you to participate. That's right. Heart the video, put comments in the comment box. We want you to ask questions because we want to get to some of your questions around millennials and the Black church, specifically here in the city of Detroit. We want this to be an interactive experience. And so I see some of the folks that have joined us, Joyce and Reggie and Emily. Welcome to the watch party. You guys be sure to share this watch party. Listen. So we can't have a watch party without first watching something, right? And so I really want to begin first before we get into some of the clips around your ministry philosophies. I think all of you have a common through line in your ministry for community. And social activism and social justice. And so I really want to hear from you how you are coming and where you are coming to this space from. Reverend Kanita Harris, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow. Well, my philosophy, I think, of ministry is that ministry extends beyond the walls of the church, the four walls of the church. And so, for me, ministry has
Mm,
looked a little bit differently, sort of in this leg of my ministry, and pretty much wherever space that I'm in, I look at it as ministry. And so, part of that is doing ministry at Detroit Bible Tabernacle, but it's also doing ministry at Jefferson East Inc. And that is, of course, one foot in the community and one foot in the church. And I just believe that whatever the presence of the church is, the ecclesia, us called out ones, that's where ministry is. And you'll hear me reference it all the time. Reverend Barry, he loves it when I talk about standing at the intersection of faith and justice. That for me, that is really where I think about what is the call. I think to the generation, especially this generation of millennials. I think we stand there at that intersection, and for me, that's where God stands. And so, we are really called again to be neighbors to one another, and that extends to anyone that God sees fit in terms of us, and with the immediate need, meeting needs in the community. If we have the ability to do so, then the demand of justice is that we meet that need. And so, for me, that's sort of where I stand when it comes to my philosophy, if you will, using your language, Mr. Bailey, about ministry.
The ecclesia of it all. Grab your thesauruses, ladies and gentlemen. What? Pastor Barry, how about you?
Okay, so one of the things that I always say, we are Christians. So as Christians, we believe that a virgin had a baby. My faith is based on a virgin having a baby. With man, this is something that is impossible, but our faith is built on it. So if a virgin can have a baby, then we can do all things. We can rebuild community. We can restore families. We can create businesses. We can create jobs. And we can stand up and be the people of God that we really know that we need to be. I would say when the church stand up, when the people of God stand up, stupid, sit down. So we have got to get up off our assets. And our assets are our faith, our hope, the scripture, the spirit, and go out and make a difference in the world. And we have that ability to be able to do it. So many times we say God is not called the qualified. He qualifies the people who he called. We are all qualified when we are believers and when we want to be able to move and when we want to go. And the church is the place to make that happen. And it really happens a lot with young people. So young people are vital. Young people are needed. And so then therefore we encourage young people to be the best they can possibly be. The church is the hub through which all of this can take place.
Wow. Leveraging our assets, right? Such an amazing pearl of wisdom. All right, the young phenom, Minister Micaiah
mhm.
Keener. It's on you.
Thank you so much, Orlando. So, I'm one of those people who believe that the future is digital. And so, one of the places that I've been in, especially in this season, is just learning how to incorporate our faith in our church with the new digital world that we have to adapt to and that we have to get adjusted to. And so, one of the things that I've been doing is utilizing and using as many social platforms as I can to spread the word across. And so, my purpose is very simple. I believe that I am here to help young people strengthen or establish their relationship with God through social media, through outreach, through evangelism, whatever tools that I can reach that are able to reach and help other millennials. That's one of the things that I'm doing to help others stay connected with the faith.
Wow, the future is digital. Listen, it's this is going to be just amazing. So all of you all have been guests on American Black Journal. And of course, we have this year-long series where we're talking about the Black church in Detroit. And we're the watch party, we got to watch some stuff. And so I want to go to the first clip and then have you guys sort of react to it. Reverend Kenita Harris appeared on American Black Journal, interviewed by our own Stephen Henderson. Take a look. We'll be right back.
Kenita Harris, I would love for you to pick up on that idea of prophecy. What is the role that the Black church will be asked to play? Think about all of the things that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
African Americans really trying to, I think, redefine our place and our role in American society. The church is bedrock in that movement and in that conversation. So prophesize a little about where.
Well, I think reaching back into the prophetic tradition and this whole idea of subversiveness, and this role that the Black church has played in terms of in movements, whether it's been acknowledged or not by those of the day. The Black church experience, the presence of the Black church has always again had this role of holding up the moral imperative of calling out injustice, and then calling out injustice in terms of a return to a moral sort of rightness, as Reverend Barber talks about, a moral sort of revival, if you will, within America, and having that sort of role, prophetic role, if you will, in relationship to political realities. I think that's really the challenge of what we're facing as the Black church today. And I mean, in terms of living within an age of movements, right? I mean, we've seen sort of the uprising of movements from Black Lives Matter to, the hashtag movements, to Me Too, but then even this sense of injustice that comes from even with issues around immigration, issues pertaining to environmental justice, even sort of the lifting up of environmental racism. I mean, there is a plethora of issues that we are addressing and facing. But I think one of the things that, again, that even as a millennial and looking back in terms of this, again, prophetic tradition of speaking truth to power, and lifting up the moral imperative, I think one of the things that we continue to see is that particular call and that particular role. The Black church today, I think, has to, rediscover, in a sense, what its place is, its place in life, if you will, in terms of how are we called in a very diverse and inclusive way to still speak to the issues that pertain to the Black community, to the Black experience, but as well as sort of think about our relationship to not only just our oppression, but the oppression of all.
Back here live, I want to talk about the intersectionality of the lives of millennials, particularly elder and middle millennials who inherited a tanked economy. And if you are here in the city of Detroit, you also inherited a bankrupt Detroit, probably in the beginning or somewhat middle of your experience in the workforce. And so the reality of the socio-political times is palpable for millennials, because there's always been this tug of war with us as we have come into adulthood and working age, right? And so there is a demand, and I'm not certain if it's a clear demand, but I've been hearing a demand on the church to get back to community. Pastor Barry, what say you?
Said, I know that people are interested in is definitely the future of the church. And one of the things that the church is known for, the Black church in America, is it stands on standing up for the underdog and working on human rights. During the 1950s and 60s, it was the Black church that actually moved things during that time. It was young people during that time who were boarding the buses from the north and going down south and making a difference in the south, standing up. And what was amazing to me was a lot of those young people, before they got on the buses, were literally signing their wills because they knew they may not come back. And I just could not imagine being, 19, 20, 21, 22, signing a will. And I remember a reporter during that time was talking to the young people and asked one of the young people who was getting on the bus and just asked, why are you doing this if you know that you may die? And she said something profound. She said, what's worse than death is to do nothing. And I think what people are looking for from the church is, what is our role when it comes down to the movements that's taking place in the world? Where do we stand on racial injustice, social injustice? Where do we stand on the environment, climate change? All of the issues that people are facing, they just want to know, where is the church? And we look to the past in the sense that the past showed us exactly how the Black church in particular literally stood up to all the evils of the world. It was the church that was in the face of the politicians. It was the church that was in the face of evil business practices and evil laws. And they literally stood up, and many people paid it with their lives. They paid the price with their lives. And so we come from that tradition and that history. And here we are, 50, 60 years later, still fighting and still standing up. The mission continues. We still need to work.
Yeah, Pastor Bree. I want to talk about Reverend Kenita, this new call and this I wouldn't call it new, but this more palpable call and call to movement that millennials are placing on our centers of faith, our churches, right? It's been a long time. Pastor Barry talked about, 50 years ago and some of the things that we went through about 50 years ago. But then there was also a period where, Black folks begin to progress in America and begin to climb the social register, if you will. But millennials, like I said before, inherited a different kind of America, and that call is returning. What say you, Reverend Kenita?
I do think that call has returned. Yes, we inherited a different type of America. And I think that, again, this rich history that we have as the Black church, that it's always been the business of the church of all of God's people to love justice, to do mercy, to walk humbly with our God. That's always been our call. But I sort of feel this gravitas of this demand of justice. It makes me think of MLK's words talking about the price that we pay in terms of partaking of the drug of gradualism, and how that in some ways has affected. I think when you talked about the progress that we've made in terms of socially and economically, and I do think that there is an awakening. I feel like the giant was asleep and it has awakened again. And again, we are in an age of movements. And I think that there is a demand. And I do think that the demand is clear. As we have seen in terms of out in the community, even the cry, I think especially when we look at like movements like Black Lives Matter, this cry for justice in terms of violence that is inflicted upon Black bodies, and that being, our children, our mothers, our fathers, our sons, our daughters. And so, the church, again, as I was saying before in the clip, has this role of standing, again, at that intersection and reminding the world about the call that we have to do justice. And then our work in terms of participating in that ministry, if you will, as the people of God. So I really do think that we have come full circle again to being able to address some of these things that we see that are affecting, the lives of people. This is not just about statistics. This is not just about nameless ones. This is about really what is happening and affecting Black folks in Black communities all over the country. And so with that, the challenges that we face, we hear the rumblings. And so that's why we see the feet marching again. That's why we see the arms in the air. And that's why we see people saying that you need to pay attention to what's happening. And what's happening to us is that, we are made in the image and likeness of God as well. And so for us, it's about lifting our voices, and it's a prophetic voice. It's a prophetic call. And again, this goes to speaking truth to power. And so, yes, I definitely believe there's a demand that is upon us. And I think that the church then has to then sort of imagine prophetically what that role looks like in the communities that we live in today. Yeah.
You said something that I want to highlight, but I'm going to come back to it. I want to know, for the millennial that's seeking justice, if they're also seeking a gospel that helps said millennial become spiritually moral, and what that looks like. But I want to talk to Minister Micaiah, because we're talking about this demand on part of millennials and Gen Zers for justice and for movements. In Detroit, for years, history has shown us, has been the birther and mother of movements, whether it's Black religiosity, whether it's Black liberation, whether it's the first place where Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech. I want to know what you're hearing from your peer group within your age, because I think that is where the change and the revolution that we're looking for is really going to come, because I think we tend to elderize people like Martin Luther King, and like Martin Luther King 1.0, even Jesus, 33 years. That was it. That's all we got, right? Yeah. So what are you hearing, Minister Micaiah, from your peer group?
I think the biggest thing that my peer group is starting to learn and understand is that whenever we are neutral, we have already chosen the side of the oppressor. And so one of the things that I love about my generation and my peer group is that we understand the importance of picking a side, because at the end, I do believe that that is what it boils down to. And one of the things that I truly believe is that Jesus Christ was an activist. He was someone who was an advocate for those who were counted out, for those who experience hate, for those who experience bigotry of any kind. And so one of the things that I believe that my peer group is starting to not only learn but act upon is the importance of picking a side and understanding that in a time like this, that it's horrible to remain neutral. And so I think that is the biggest thing. And I think another thing that we're also learning is that just because you're not experiencing the problem firsthand does not mean that it isn't a problem. And I think that one of the biggest problems that was exposed last year is that people thought, well, because it wasn't affecting me or my home or my family, that I didn't have to partake. But if it hits one here, it hits us everywhere. And so one of the things that I really love about my peer group is just our ability to be able to come together and say, you know what, I may have not experienced this firsthand, but if my neighbor did, then it affects me just as much.
Wow, we're in it together.
Yeah.
Pastor Barry, your church has a really amazing population. I know that you have more men in your congregation, but you also have a really thriving millennial base as well. We have a clip of you with our host, Stephen Henderson. We're going to play that, and then we're going to react to it. We'll be right back.
Pastor Barry, I know from your church that activism takes on a very specific role in your community. It takes on a very specific role with young people. in your community? Talk about what that looks like.
Well, one of the reasons why the church has been so successful is because we combine your purpose and your activism with your spirituality. One of the things that have been quite successful is the fact that we let everybody know that on so many different levels, Jesus Christ and his disciples and a lot of people in the Bible were actually activists. They were standing up for what was right. They were standing up against the status quo. They were standing up in the face of evil, and they were letting people know that with God, all things are possible. And we, as the people of God, we have a role to play in manifesting that in this world. So we have a particular role. So our young people in particular, they look for their purpose in life. And part of that is to stand up for the right thing. And we give them the opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah. Pastor Barry, so much of the work that you guys do in your community is about sustaining the people who live there. Talk about what that work has looked like during COVID and how ravaged your community really has been by all of it.
Yeah, the community, COVID kind of brought a lot of things to light that were kind of undercover. There were things that we found out as a community, as a city, that we honestly and truly really were able to do. One of the things that kind of surprised me was the fact that we could get everybody's water turned back on, that we could run the buses for free. We found out that children were getting one of their major meals in school. So it brought a lot of things to light. Senior citizens, honestly and truly, could be offered to go into stores earlier than everybody else so that they didn't have to worry about everybody else in the store getting in the way. So we found out there were so many things that we really could do, and COVID brought those things to light. And hopefully we won't turn our back on those things, because as things begin to change, we still need to be looking at those things. So COVID brought a lot of things to light. One of the other things too that it actually showed too, that the church is more than the building, that it really is the community, and it is making sure that the people eat, whether or not we're doing it on the inside of the building or on the street or in the parking lot. We found out that we were making sure that people were able to stay in their homes and be able to get their rent paid. We made sure that so many churches in Detroit was actually making sure that people had all of their necessities and were able to make ends meet. So it was all of these things that was taking place that we found out that we could do as a church and as a community. And we did find out that the church really is the people and not just the building. So that was one of the biggest things that came out of COVID.
Back here live, we want to encourage all of our viewers on Facebook to not only share this watch party, but to be an active participant. We want you to heart, we want you to comment, and we want you to ask questions. We want to give a shout out to viewers that we have from New York and Hawaii. Welcome to the Black Church in Detroit. And we also want to amplify and uplift Reggie Wells, who is asking for prayer. All of these reverends on here, Reggie, we sure we can get that prayer through for you. Pastor Barry, I want to talk to you about what you just said, but I want to ask you in a really practical way, because I really do think people of the faith are trying to figure out how to engage and retain millennials. How are you on a practical level here? How have you created a mechanism to not only hear what millennials have to say, but to implement vision ideas that come from millennials without tokenizing them?
Oh, wow, that was a powerful question. Okay, let me see if I can answer that to the best of my ability. So
I am enjoying keeping you on your toes, Pastor Barry, because this is
yeah, I see. Thank you, Orlando. So 60% of our congregation, 60% is African-American male under the age of 30. And so a lot of times when people come here, they stop and say, wow, how did you get so many young men to come to church? And I keep telling them, they don't reject God. They reject the package that the church put God in. It's all about packaging. The message and the gift is the same. So it's the way that you present the message and the gift of the Spirit, the gift of the Word, the gift of God. And so we put it in a package that young people can understand. Through putting it in a package that they can understand, they began to bring out their greatness. So just so you all know, Church of the Messiah rehab 200 units of housing. So we're the largest developer in our community and neighborhood. It's not Dan Gilbert, not Mike Illich, it is the church. We are the internet provider. We are the competition to Comcast and AT&T, and our internet is free. We have a business incubation center inside of the church, and we turn out businesses most run by young people. We have a doctor's office and attorney's office. So you look up, you come to church to get an apartment, you come to church to see a doctor, you come to church to see an attorney, come to church to get a job, come to church to start a business, come to church to get the internet. People stop and say, wow, let me go to church. Where is all of this coming from? And so they come to church, they find out their greatness, they find that they have something that they can contribute to the world that is tangible. We're going to teach you the spirit, but we have to make that tangible in this world. And that's what happens with the young people. That's what they want to be able to see. When they see the church as the developer, see the church creating the businesses and the jobs, they see the church bridging the gaps. They see the church have the town halls. They see the church hold the government officials accountable and businesses accountable to be part of the community in the church. They see that. So the gospel becomes tangible, and all of this is being led by the people of God. Then we teach them who they are and what they can bring to the table. We allow them and give them that space and give them the backing and the expertise that they need in order to make that happen. So we go from Ray Ray and Pookie, from those who come in trouble and don't have much, and then the next thing you know, they're running the internet. They're getting a job, they're building a business, and then they see Christ taking place in their life in tangible ways. They go out and evangelize.
From Ray Ray and Pookie to Raymond and Percy, right? Just jokes. I want to ask a follow-up to that, Reverend Barry, and that is, for the ministry leaders out here who are hearing everything that you are saying, it sounds like that you have built an amazing infrastructure to be able to do what you are doing. How does one get started?
Well, you have to remember this. It's the closest thing that we have to a manual is the Bible, and everything we do comes out of the book. The scripture that we use, there's a couple scriptures that we use. One is 1 Corinthians 4:20, and that scripture reads, the kingdom of heaven is not mere words, it's a demonstration of power. So it's about also showing the power behind the words that we say. It is that power that people are looking for. The other thing, too, that comes out of Isaiah that is actually posted inside the church when you walk in the door, it says, you will be known as the people who rebuild the walls, who restored the ruined houses. You will be the repairers of the breach. And so then, therefore, we're showing evidence of what that is. The thing is, you just get started. Jesus Christ, when he got his disciples, he said, follow me. There was no application to fill out. He didn't wait until you went back home and got your affairs started. No, you just need to get started. God will supply everything it is that you need, but you have to at least get started. And that's what we tell people. Just get started, go, and God will provide.
Yeah, I want to ask our viewers this question, and I invite you to put this in the comments. How are you, especially if you are not a millennial, but even if you are a millennial, how are you listening to each other and engaging with each other in this tension that we are all carrying at the intersection of Christianity and justice? But, this is really a challenge to the older generations, right? Gen X and the baby boomer generation, who tend to just sort of critique at will the millennial generation, but absolving themselves of all responsibility, not even remembering that you are the generation that raised the millennials. And so a critique on the generation is also a critique on yourself. But, we could talk about that another time. Micaiah, I want to ask you about the same question I asked Pastor Barry in terms of how are you in practice engaging and hearing millennials, and how are they participating with your ministry gifts? I saw that you were at a service on Sunday, doing prayer with Pastor Jeremy Mosley and Minister Bianca White, some friends of mine. How's it going?
So one of the things that I'm learning is that we like to stay connected within small communities. And I think that small communities can take place even in big communities. And so I think that one of the most important things that we as young people, and I've told Orlando this before, is that we want our voice to be heard. And I talked to you guys about this the other day, and I told you that one of the biggest things that we want is to be contributors and not just consumers. So whenever we are under a vision where we're able to contribute to the vision, contribute to the plan, contribute to the goal, that is one of the things that helps us to continue to drive, to continue to keep the momentum, and to continue to push whatever the vision is. And so I really stand on that. And that is one of the things that I love about being at Triumph Church is that Pastor Solomon Kinlock allows young people to contribute. And that is one of the things that I've been able to use in my ministry. What is it that young people are contributing that can help to establish and continue the vision?
Wow. We have some questions. By all means, everybody who's watching us on Facebook Live, feel free to put your questions in. We're gonna definitely get to your questions because they are some good ones. I want to talk about the trend that the Pew Research Center found around the relationship young Black millennials are having with the Black church as it is today. So I want to introduce this clip. I had the opportunity a couple of months ago to interview Minister Micaiah Keener from Triumph Church, and here is what she had to say. Let's take a look. I want to talk to you a little bit about some findings that the Pew Center found. They did a study of faith amongst Black Americans, and one of the findings is that younger Black Americans are less likely to have grown up in church, or particularly the Black church. You're a minister in one of the Blackest cities, in the Blackest cities in America. Tell us what you are seeing.
So I definitely am seeing a lot of people that look like me in church. Now, I'll be honest, there are people that look like me that are leaving church, but I do want to come in and highlight those that are sticking to church, those that are coming to church. And I think the biggest thing behind it is the community that the church is creating to make sure that people that come from different ethnic backgrounds or minorities are able to come in and are able to be themselves and community, not only with communities that look like us, but communities that are developing diversity as well. So I think that that's really important, just being able to establish healthy communities for people to be a part of when they come to church.
Absolutely. One of the things that you said, though, is that there are people who look like you, Black folks who look like you, who are around your age, or maybe a little bit older, a little bit younger, are leaving the church. Do you have any idea as to why that is happening?
You know what, Orlando, to be honest, I think that we have mastered church service, but we haven't mastered church systems. So we're doing service really great. We're killing service. We're killing praise and worship. We're killing the choir. We're killing music. But we have to have systems in place, just as any other business, just as McDonald's has a system, just as Starbucks has a system, just as Amazon has a system. I think that the church has to work on implementing good systems and strategies to keep people not only coming back on just Sunday or just Wednesday for Bible study, but to keep them feeling like they're connected on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely think that that is something that not just the Black church, but that the church as a whole has to work on to make sure that people feel connected every day rather than just on Sunday.
Minister Micaiah swinging heavy on that clip. We have a question that I want to get to, and it's sort of along the lines of what you were saying in the clip, Micaiah, particularly around pulling off a masterful production in church service. This question is from Dee Dee, who's watching live from the Ecumenical Theological Seminary Facebook page, and it says, "Do you feel like millennials are moving away from traditional church foundations while serving God in their upgraded versions of praise and worship. We get into the music now, right? And I feel like it's way too much entertainment and not solid evangelizing. So the smoke, we can't have the smoke machines and the lights and the band and all of that. Reverend Kenita, jump in on that one.
Oh man. I think I spoke a little bit about this on the radio show today about just as Minister Micaiah was talking about, being able to create communities is very key, no matter what size the church is. If it's the size of Triumph, if it's the size of Messiah, or if it's the size of Detroit Bible Tabernacle, we're a small church. But I think the thing is about not what you're just doing on Sunday, but what it is that you do Monday through Sunday. And I think that this whole thing about creating community and creating space within the community of faith for people to be able to come and to have the space to be able to express their faith in diverse ways. And there's nothing wrong with traditions. Traditions are what we are tied to in terms of our faith. And traditions are good and healthy in some ways, but not so much as traditionalism. And so traditions are different than traditionalism. And so I think as a church, we are a growing, I want to say, organism, if you will. The Spirit moves as the Spirit moves. And I think for our generation, from generation to generation, it's the same praise. It's the same praise to the same God. It's the same worship of the same God. But every generation has their way of expressing that. I mean, when I talk to my dad, and he was, when he was younger, him and my uncles and my aunt, his siblings, they were in a community choir. And back when they started singing songs like James Cleveland, the generation that was older than them was saying, that they shouldn't be singing that type of music in the church. And so we hear the same thing today. The genre of music, it's changed. And I think that even in worship, it's changed as well, but it's still the same God. And I think it's just the expression of how we understand that God that we get to experience today, I think, in the Black church and in a lot of different churches, multiracial churches, predominantly Black churches, and what have you. So I think that every generation begins to create new traditions and new expressions of faith. And I think it's okay for us to do that. We need to be able to have that liberty. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And I think that is what we have to remember as a church, that this is how the Spirit moves and the Spirit shows up. And I love the way and how the Spirit shows up when the Spirit moves upon Black bodies of all ages. And I think that when we are able to do that together, it is truly a wonderful concert, if you will, of praise and worship that I believe the Lord is pleased with.
Micaiah, talk about, the desire to infuse the culture with more of God. That's a mission from a church that I love, True Life Christian Church. Their mission is to infuse the culture with more of God. And the relationship that you have and your Millennial and Gen Z peers have with tradition.
I'm not afraid to try new things. And I'm sure many of you have heard the quote that the last 7 words of a dying church are, "We haven't done it that way before." And so whenever we
I
come...
have not heard that. Wait a minute. I have not heard that. Say it again. You haven't done that before?
So that's a famous quote, that the last 7 words of a dying church are, "We haven't done it that way before." And I feel that whenever we make the mistake of getting stuck in what we're used to, we don't get to walk into what could be. And I think that sometimes we judge what we don't understand, especially believers. If we don't understand it, we're quick to judge it or shun it. And so one of the things that I love about my peer group and my generation is that we are a generation that is full of creatives, not only in the church, but in every field, in every marketplace. And I love the fact that we are able to be authentically us while expressing our creativity, while still holding on to our Christian morals and our Christian values. And so I don't believe that church has to look the same every Sunday. I don't believe that church has to look the same in every building. I believe that the word stays the same, but I do believe that it can be brought in different methods. And as long as it does not change the trajectory of the word of God, then I'm always okay and open with trying something new.
Pastor Barry, I want to ask you about this cry and this demand for justice, and holding that up against spiritual morality. Do you know people want justice and people want socio political advancement, but I'm wondering, in your experience, do people also want the Christian spiritual morality that comes with it? And I think this question from Greg Bryant personifies what I'm trying to ask. It says, how do we negotiate the Black church's holiness and personal piety tradition and the millennial Generation Z's desire to embrace more fluid understandings of personal piety and morality, some would seem to run in opposition to a plain reading of the scripture? How do we balance the Black church's justice and holiness traditions? Pastor Barry?
Wow. So first, let me just say that these other two ministers you got on here are amazing. They are amazing. I want to do a pulpit exchange with the two of them. Got to get y'all to the church. Incredibly powerful. So, wow, you couldn't have picked two better people. So I'm happy. But let me say that your faith and the work that you do when it comes to issues of justice is one and the same. You have to remember, they didn't kill Jesus because he was religious and he was nice. They killed him because he made a difference, and he just did not go for the status quo. He stood up for what was right, and he made a difference in the world. And that's what it is that we're supposed to do. If you are a Christian or profess to be a Christian and you are comfortable with injustice, whether that's in America or anywhere in the world, then I question whether or not you're a Christian. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat against justice everywhere. So when injustice takes place and we do absolutely positively nothing, that is spiritual malpractice. And we're not doing it correctly according to what the Bible teaches us and to what God is teaching us. So it's very important that we must stand up, and the church must be that voice. The other thing is, too, when it comes down to religion is nothing more than an organized form through which you choose to serve God, which is kind of comfortable to you. And God is not so much into how you serve him. It's more so why you serve him. And what is that intention? And what are you doing? It's not going to be, he's not going to ask you at the end time, during judgment time, about how you did church. He's going to ask us, how were we the church? How were we the embodiment of the body of Christ? And let me just end with this, because I mentioned this on the radio, where the assistant pastor kind of gave us an analogy of a song. He said, every year at Christmas, you hear Nat King Cole's chestnuts roasting over an open fire. And originally it came out on a 78, and then it went to 45. The same song went to an 8-track tape. Then it went to a cassette tape. The same song went to a CD, and now it's, I don't know what y'all call it, the iPod or the MP3 player.
Digital streaming.
Right. But it's the same song. It is the same song. It is just a different method of doing the exact same song. And sometimes that's what it is when it comes down to Christianity and the way we do church. The message is the same. The method through which we do it is just a little bit different. So the message and the gift is identical and the same. We're all called to do social justice. We're all called to make a difference in the world. That's what God wants us to do. And that's what we're supposed to do.
And it's so funny, though, because people want to hold on to that LP.
Yeah, they do. So real
Some
quick,
people-
Orlando, it is also where what we had to do at Messiah, because we're an Episcopal church, so we have a long tradition of the way that we do church. We did parallel development. We had a traditional 10 o'clock service and a brand new seeker service at 12 o'clock. So it was the thing of both services went at the same time for those who were comfortable with the old way, and then those who needed to come in who needed something a little bit different, where the old way didn't necessarily work for the people who were coming in who were seeking. So
That's actually, I think that's a great compromise. The point that I was making is the method through which the gospel is delivered is living and is going to change. And we, as people, and I'm sure we will do it too, as we begin to age and latch on to whether it's the LPs, the 8 tracks, the cassette tapes. I remember the cassette tapes or the CDs. It's like, it for me, Reverend Kenita, it took me so long to put away my VHS tapes. I'm like, I spent a lifetime collecting these. I'm not getting my VCR. And I
still have to pull it out sometimes.
I went kicking and screaming, but it is necessary. And I think that if I can just infer my opinion, is that the gospel is living, right? And so because we are talking about a living gospel and a living God,
yes,
right, and it's going to evolve. The way that we continue to interpret the revelation that we continue to get, the way that we preach, the way that we teach, and the mechanisms and media by which we cascade message, it all continues to evolve. But Reverend Kenita, I want to talk to you about millennials and whether or not they here for some critique and correction, because I think what Greg is asking is, this intersection of justice and holiness, right? And being a Christian, we are called to be set apart. We are called to be the city set upon a hill that can't be hid, right? How are millennials reckoning with, okay, we gonna do the justice stuff too, but get it together. Get
it together. Yeah. I have to go back to, what I've been taught. My mother, God rest her soul, she always said to me and reminded me, and I talked about this a little bit on the radio show earlier today, that, I was privileged to be able to grow up in a home where my parents, my dad is a pastor. My mom, she was an activist in her own right, lived out the witness of her faith in terms of the ministry she had in the community. And it was a faith that they passed on to me. But at a certain point in time, I took ownership of that faith and lived out that faith. And one of the things my mom always said to me was, Kenita, you have to think about the way in which you conduct yourself. And think about the way in which you sort of move through spaces, if I could put it that way. And remember that what you do and how you live not only affects you, but it also impacts other people connected to you. And so I think that for any generation, whether we're older or whether we're younger, we are never too far off from being challenged. From being challenged, whether that's being corrected, whether that's being brought back to the center, which is what a prophetic call is essentially about, is the prophetic. We look at the prophetic as us standing in line to get a prophecy of some kind. And that's not necessarily all that the prophetic is about. The prophetic tradition is about calling people back, calling the people of God back to the ways of God, calling the people of God back to remind them of who they are and whose they are. in terms of what they are called to do and who they are called to be in the world. And when we as the church forget that, we forget the ways of God, then we truly need prophets. And I do believe that we have prophetic voices that still yet challenge the church. It was the prophet that was called to the people of Israel to remind them when they forgot the ways of justice, when they forgot how to treat the orphan, when they forgot how to treat the widow, when they forgot how to treat the immigrant. It was the prophet that reminded them of the mercy and the grace that God had extended to them, to call them to come back to the ways of God. And so we are never, too far off or never too much in our righteousness, too good in our righteousness to be corrected. And it is wisdom. It is wisdom to listen to wisdom as she shouts and demands for us to think about and to remember who we are and whose we are in terms of being people of faith. So I think that we need to make sure that we leave room for us to be corrected, because we need it. And wisdom is ageless. It's not just about because you're older and correcting us. Sometimes us younger people have a word to correct even the older generation. It goes both ways. The spirit moves as the spirit moves. We have to be open to be corrected and to be able to be called back to the center of why we're called the ecclesia, why we're the called out ones. And so that's my way of responding to that.
Wisdom is ageless. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we have two amazing Black women on this panel, and Pastor Barry is in the minority. And I think that is a powerful testament to where we are and how we are continuing to evolve, especially as a faith within the Black church that has been traditionally centered around patriarchy. I had the opportunity to ask Micaiah about this in this last clip. Let's take a look. You are a young woman in ministry, and women in ministry leadership in Black churches have had a tough go historically because of the patriarchal nature of the Black church. How are you faring in 2021?
You know what? When I first went into ministry, my pastor used to always talk about exactly what you just said. And even though I heard him out, I didn't necessarily believe it all the way until I started facing challenges or doors that were closed on me because I was a woman in ministry. And so I didn't know if it was all the way true back then, but I definitely believe it now. And one of the things that I really, really hope that the church is able to do, not even in the future, but right now, is create spaces for women to be able to optimize in their roles, in their callings, in church leadership. I don't believe that God has asked women to come in and just to sit on the side and be quiet. That is not my belief. I believe that every individual, man and woman, has a unique gift, a unique calling. And I do believe that women should be able to utilize their gifts in the same way as men in church roles.
Back here live, we are in the home stretch, and I want to provide an opportunity for each of these amazing ministers of the gospel to have just a quick prophetic closing, whatever you feel led to leave with our viewing audience. I'm going to encourage you to do so now. Pastor Barry, we'll start with you.
Okay, so let me use something that is that I love, and it's a statement that was actually by Muhammad Ali, that is spiritual in nature, in its intent. When he said, "When the mission is right, the odds don't matter." And that just rocked me to the core when I first heard that, because it goes with, we walk by faith, not by sight. It is the fact that there's so many obstacles in this world. There's so many things that we see where there needs to be improvement, so many things to work on. But if we remember who we are and whose we are, we can do all things. All things are possible with Christ who strengthens us. We have to remember that the same spirit that raised him from the dead is on the inside of us. And the most powerful thing that's in the Bible that Jesus said is, greater things than this will you do. And when I heard that, I said, so I get an opportunity to do great things. I literally will be qualified to do great things if I am a believer. And these signs will follow those who believe. So my thing is to be the believer and to stand and allow these great things to happen in the world. We are greater than what we allow ourselves to be.
Amazing. Minister Micaiah, your prophetic closing marks.
Yes, thank you, Orlando. I definitely want to tell everyone that is watching or that will come across our watch party to, I would say, to go after what you really want and not what it is that you think you can get. I think that the pandemic has kind of caused some of us, I think the pandemic has kind of caused some of us to lose fire and to settle for what is in front of us. Just because it's in front of you doesn't mean it's what God has for you. So I just want to remind everybody to just reestablish, refocus, reignite, do whatever it is that you need to do. And just remember that Ephesians 3:20 says God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above and beyond all that we can ever ask, think, or imagine. So remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Kanita, you have the last word.
Well, very short. I just want to say I'm really grateful for this space, for the opportunity. I think that this is just a great demonstration of the diversity and the variety within the Black church. And there's a lot of wisdom that was shared, I think, tonight. And I just want to encourage, if you are watching us tonight, that you continue this kind of creating of space within the local church to be able to not only talk about this kind of stuff, but to also, again, as Minister Micaiah talked about, creating community and giving space, I think, to even just young people, this generation, Generation Z, younger folks, that they truly have a connection with God and have gifts, I think, to give to the body and to the world. And the church has to create space for that. And so I think that that's really what I want to leave with folks tonight is begin to do some of this work even in the local church, creating space for work, for generations to work alongside each other, not just worship alongside each other, but work alongside of each other, and contribute to all that God has in terms of calling us to participate in the redemptive work that the Spirit is doing in the world. He's calling all of us to do it, but we have this work of, again, creating space, and we may be at a place, and I believe we are, where young leaders in the church, they are ready to do the work, but the opportunity is what needs to be presented. And so with that, I think that is something that we all can do as the church, is to be able to make sure that we create opportunities for our young people to live out the witness of their faith and contribute to the change that they want to see in the world. We as the church, sometimes it's just, we got to move out the way, and we just got to let God do what God does through whoever he chooses. And that's really what we're all really called to do, is to be able to discern the times and know that change doesn't mean that it's moving you out of the way. It just means that God is doing something different, and finding your place in that. And so I just encourage people in whatever church you belong to create that space for whomever comes and walks through your doors, whoever sits in your pews, that we're all gifted and called to do the purpose that God has placed us on this earth to do.
Wow, there you have it. Such a dynamic group of panelists, Pastor Barry, Minister Micaiah, and Reverend Kanita. Your wisdom that was shared on tonight is invaluable. We want to thank all of the viewers that have tuned in into our watch party tonight. This video will be shared. It will be up on our pages, so continue to share it. We want you to join the Black Church in Detroit Facebook group, because we will be posting updates there. Also, the Black Church in Detroit series on American Black Journal will continue throughout the end of this year. And stay tuned for more watch parties like this. I'm Orlando Bailey of Bridge Detroit and American Black Journal. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.